So all he ever enjoyed doing was practical jokes or talking about his practical jokes. And he loved keeping you in like this combination of misery and suspense. Like I remember for years he'd say, Derek. He had a New York accent and he had a lisp at the same time. Derek, I'm going to make you a rocket, but I'm going to make you my primeval rocket. It was a weird accent he had. Family was from Brooklyn, and he had a really bad lisp. And so half the time, people would say, I don't understand what he said. So, I remember when he first started talking about the rocket, he's like, Derek, I'm going to make you my primeval rocket. Like, okay. And I said, well, what's that? So he just started describing this amp. And he says, I think I'm going to make the amp today. And he would do it just to be a jerk because he knew I would get so excited about it. And I'd say, you know, you're really mean. And he'd go, that little sick, sinister laugh of his. And he'd do this for years. I mean, I got the first Express in 1985. And after that, he kept talking about this amp. And, you know, he'd say, people don't care about tone right now. They want saturation and metal. And you know, the first couple of amps that he did, both the Liverpool and Express, weren't as gained out. And people would keep complaining about it. They wanted more. So he compromised. And he never even really liked them. So he just did them as compromises. Anyway, the funny part of this is he'd say, do you want a primeval rocket? And I said, sure. He goes, well, good. I'm glad you want one. And that's it. And he'd shut it down. He was such a jerk. But it was so funny. And then he actually started building one. And so he would invite me to the basement. Well, not invite me to the basement. It was an open door policy. I was there easily 2 to 4 times a week for probably 10 years. If I was home from the road and I wasn't teaching and I wasn't working, I was at Kenny's. Like, I remember I almost lost a girlfriend because she said, can we do something more than go to Ken Fischer's? And I would say, why? And so he'd show me a chassis. He goes, guess what this is, Derek? Guess what this is? I go, what? He goes, well, it's not a primeval. So he was just like that. And then when he actually started building it for me, he says, hey, Derek, I got a call. I want you to call me. I think I got the primeval rocket done. And I'd call him and I'd all freak out. He goes, oh, sorry, I was kidding. So he was just like that. He just liked to keep you on the edge of his seat. He's just funny that way. I remember one time he said, hey, I got this new amp. And he had taken a pencil sharpener. And he hollowed out the back and he put in a little speaker. And then he ran it into one of the heads. And he said, play something. And I hit a chord and this speaker literally blew up and popped out of the housing and flew to the ground. And I said, why did you do that? He goes, oh, I just wanted to see what would happen. And so he wired up this little speaker and I saturated it with 36 watts of Class A energy, and he just blew the thing out of the pencil sharpener. I mean, that's what he did. He was just crazy. But, you know, those are my memories of Kenny. I very rarely remember talking about technical things and just describing it on paper. It was like we were having a Sunday dinner. And that's what he was like. And even when we sat down and half the time I was playing, my back was turned or I was blindfolded. Like we had this bandana down there. It was a real bandana and it was actually tied for my head. I used it so much. He would blindfold me and I'd face and I'd play. And I would either play his Hondo Les Paul with real 58 pickups in it or the ESP Telecaster that I got him. It was like a solid swamp ash body and a maple neck, and it had old vintage pickups in it. And that's what he literally designed the amps off of. One of those 2 guitars. So I would just pick them up. I would put this bandana on, and I'd sit there blindfolded. So unless we were doing that and doing the blindfold tests and going through different tubes and capacitors and resistors, it was joke time. And then I remember one time he says, okay, now check this out. And I would remind you I was blindfolded. And he would plug me into God knows what. And some of the times I would turn up the volume a little bit, and then I would be hitting this chord on this 100-watt amp, and it would almost knock me back. And then there'd go his signature laugh. That little deviant laugh of his. And that's what it was like hanging around Kenny. It was fun. It was fun. I'm sure he had a lot of pain in his life. Girls were never interested in him. He was living and working in his mom's basement his whole life. Never left his parents' house. And, that's how he blew off steam. That's how I'm sure he got away from his completely high-functioning mind. It's just being silly and stupid. And he couldn't find anybody to be silly and stupid with. Everybody was too busy sucking the life out of him for information or, just being anal retentive about guitar. And he would try and break it up and laugh. Even the times when people like Jim Marshall would call. I can't tell you how many times Jim Marshall called. That's the owner of Marshall Amps. The guys that ran Vox, the two engineers, the guy that designed the Blue Bulldog speakers for Celestion. He was a good friend of Kenny's. He used to call all the time. And in the middle of their technical questions, Kenny would just laugh with them, cut up with them. And he would try, the funniest thing I would hear Kenny do is he would try and imitate a British accent with that Brooklyn lisp accent of his. I can't even describe how it sounded. It would just be on the floor rolling. And, that's just what he was like. He was just funny. He was a lot of fun. And I barely remember any of the conversations having to do with the technical and schematic side of Trainwrecks. I just don't. It was all tone and fun and laughs with him. So that's just some insight on Kenny's character.